Welcome to the Larry Rinker Golf Podcast, your place for tour-proven conversations, world-class instruction, and real results. I'm your host, Larry Rinker. My guest today is the owner and lead instructor at Sinclair's Golf Training Center in Euless, Texas. He is one of only 3 master instructors of golf psych in the world and is an expert in 3D swing analysis, the mental game, launch monitors, and club fitting. He and his staff currently work with more than 30 PGA Tour professionals. Please welcome my friend Jon Sinclair to the show. How you doing, Jon?
Larry, doing great. It's glad to be back on your new podcast, and looks like you're doing great.
Well, thanks. I had something happen recently. I remember you told me that Victor Hovland had come to see you, and he really just wanted to get his 3D data from you. So I was on the range at the Ritz-Carlton Golf Club Orlando, and there was Grant Waite working with Victor after he had missed 4 cuts in a row. And what was interesting to me is they were looking at video that Victor had from 2020 where he felt like he was swinging great. And here's Grant filming him on his phone. And now they get the swings looking the same. And Victor says, but it feels completely different. Do you hear that a lot when people come back to you and you have their 3D data and all of a sudden it doesn't feel anything like it used to?
Oh yeah, that's all the time. And if we in a case like Victor, he was pretty young, you know, 4 years ago, and your muscles really and your body really doesn't form as a male until you're probably about 25 when you're so. Of course, as you change, your body change, you've got, you become stronger or more or less flexible. I mean, your body's changing. So even though it may look the same, and even if you were to get a 3D, analysis that showed you that it was pretty close to the same, it's highly possible that your feels would be different. Feels are very related to sound. People don't realize it, but ball flight, they'll look at a ball and then decide how they felt. So when you factor those things together as you evolve as a person, your feels, a lot of those things it's highly likely that they'll change. And so to get a feel back, if that's what they're working on, to get a feel back from 3-4 years ago, probably not going to happen. So
yeah,
that's probably a search in a bad direction.
Well, how many times have you, as a player, said, well, I remember I was feeling this and doing this and hitting it well, and you always try to go back to those times. And it's really interesting. I learned a valuable lesson watching that lesson that, hey, feel is fickle. So what I used to feel and like, if I think and feel that, I'm not making the same swing.
And just, you don't have the same equipment. That little bit of difference, even in the iron, if they change the metal, if they change the face, if the shaft changes, you're very likely to hear something different, which is going to affect how you think you felt. So, that stuff it's rare to happen. Maybe some certain swing feels that you may feel like for me, I would say something that stuck forever would be to hit a ball straight. I have to feel like I hit it 20 yards right. I have to feel like my swing goes out 20 yards right. And that's never changed since I was 10 years old. So something like that's so ingrained, but on some mornings, 100%, I have to feel more or less or something of that. But that kind of zero has always hung in there. But, but you're talking about a full swing, you have no chance of that being the same, because even if you turn the same amount, your muscles aren't the same. Your stretch isn't the same. It's how can it feel the same?
Right. So you did a video now, it's probably been 5, 6, 7 years ago on wrist angles.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fighting this battle of that people want to say the big muscles control the little muscles. Your little muscles are your arms, hands, and wrists. In the world I live in and the world I grew up in and working with Bob Toski, was you better know what you're doing with your arms, hands, and wrists when you swing a golf club. Your hands control the face, your arms have a huge influence over the path of your club. But here you come out and you finally do one on wrist angles and what the wrists do. And I loved it, and people can still watch it. But what did you learn in that study?
Well, that wasn't necessarily a study, other than it was a video to show people the motion instead of being so stuck on the position. So, everybody gets stuck on the position. I had a client in here the other day, and he'd been working on his backswing for the last couple of years. And I was like, why? And he's like, well, that's what they told me. I said, well, the reason they probably stick there for the most part is because it's all they can see. And that's where everything's the slowest besides setup. And, as long as wherever your wrists are at the top of the swing for the most part and your club face, your body motion should match up to that and allow your hands and arms to work, as you say. I would say that's where the body really would come into to view, or for me anyway, is I know the object is to hit the ball. And if I can get a body in a position to hit it the way I want, my arms and wrists will help. But, if I'm in a bad position with the body, my arms and hands are going to move around in some way to hit the ball that maybe
Right.
I wouldn't want them to move.
Right.
So I think in those terms, I think the whole thing's connected. The wrists have to be in a certain matchup. But I mean, at the top, I've got people, major champions that are, fully cupped, and then ones that are really bowed up to, it's probably a 100-degree different range.
Wow.
from one tour player to the other tour player. But then when you turn around and watch how their body has to move to support those things, it's completely different. So, that's where I learned mostly anything, is to allow my players to have different wrist angles based on what it's easy for them to do,
Yeah.
and
And
not change them. When I first started that, actually go back to, I'll state that when I first started that, I did probably a 45-minute thing at the PGA Teaching and Coaching Summit of this far of the wrist angle and the transition. And everybody goes, what about the rest? And I thought, okay, well, I promised everybody I would do a video on it then and get it out to them and all that. Well, that video took me 3-4 months. And, I was doing it in my off time and getting it going, but it's a complicated action, and it showed the world that it's more how you motion down to the ball than it would be some particular position. Because my question to everybody was, why do we teach a flat wrist? At the top, why? What? I hear it, I see it, but I don't know why. And I didn't really get that many good answers, other than I had a few that says, well, it's easier to square the face from there. And the people that have the flat wrist to bowed wrist actually extend a little bit and then rebow it. So they move extra. Doesn't make it bad. They're consistent at it. It's fine. But the people that are cupped actually flow down in flexion at I would say a more even rate. So that was like always confusing to me. And so from that, I just learned, look, you just got to allow the player to grip the club how he should or she should, get it to the top where it's easier for them to put the club on the back of the ball. And that could be lots of different positions.
Yeah, I mean, we look at a Colin Morikawa with a weak left-hand grip, and then a Dustin Johnson with a strong left-hand grip, but yet they're both bowed at the top. And they both have won 2 major championships. So your whole 3D analysis, though, is data. It wasn't like, this is my opinion. It was, this is the results of my research. And this is what we found testing 65 PGA Tour players with a ton of wins. And then you also had your amateur database too, that you kind of showed the differences. And what was interesting to me watching that video was one of the things you said was the better player at the top of their swing, their arms shallow a little bit and they start closing the club face earlier than the amateurs that slice it.
Right. That's an amateur will tend to pull down on the shaft and open the club face. And so my term's always been, I want you to close the club face early so you don't have to close it late, and slow everything down a little bit and have a more even keeled, shutting of the club face. So it used to be one of my fundamentals, that you would need to start closing the club face in this little bit of range. But then I had a tour player show up one day and he started closing it about arms parallel, and he had won a tournament. And I was like, well, I can't use that as a fundamental anymore because there's a tour player that's proved they can go out there and be on tour and win not doing that. So
Right.
I'm down to 3 now of things that the tour players that I have in my database do the same.
And what are
And
they?
well, it's simple stuff. It's pretty much what everybody would teach anyway, is that number 1 would be the pelvis slides towards the target before it turns in the downswing direction. And then the pelvis starts first in the downswing direction, turning. So it's a slide turn. And then the last one is, we're seeing in every player some movement in the downswing of their trail heel moving, or at least twisting towards the target, versus a lot of amateurs, you see their trail heel come up and go backwards because they're pivoting off of their back foot.
Right.
And they're thinking next turn. And then we'll always see, if any one of those goes away, I think that's the one that I'm going to see go away, because some tour players may go up before they turn. But so far, everybody I've checked goes, it has this little twist even before they go up. So those are the 3 things which make perfect sense in the golf swing, that you would do that. And they're just moments in time. That's what people don't understand, and especially amateurs. It's like, these are just moments in time. The first 2 things obviously happen before the club's on the downswing. And then the twist part will happen right soon after, sometime after they transition into the downswing fully. So most of that's right before the top. So those 3 things, and pretty much that should give everybody in the world, amateurs alike, freedom to be themselves. Because if the tour players make it, and on this consistent swings, they do this a lot because they're themselves. They stick to what they do well, and they've probably had good coaching that, kept them in that way. It'd be, think of somebody, would have, and taken Scotty Scheffler and said, oh, you got to calm your feet down. Right. I mean, he's probably a used car salesman at this point, instead of what we're watching this unbelievable golf, that could have easily been, ruined. And, his coach is just awesome in that regard, that just lets these people you go back to Justin Leonard too. I mean, standing way away from the ball putting. There's tons of coaches wouldn't have let him do that.
Right.
So that, I think that's what people have to learn, and amateurs have to learn, is let me do the things I do well, and let's figure out how to get the ball, going where I want it to go.
My guest today, Jon Sinclair. He's a PGA Tour Coach, 3D expert. He's done a ton of research, and you can see he's got a lot on wrist angles and 3D analysis. Their database has over 300 PGA Tour players, 15 major champions. So a lot of great people in your database, Jon. Rate of closure. Several years ago, there was some Twitter wars on that. If somebody's rate of closure, that means the club face is closing faster coming into the ball. that they won't hit the ball as straight as somebody with a slower rate of closure. How true is that? Or is it even a major factor?
Um, well, something the problem with rate of closure is if you use a number as the judgment factor, then you could have any number of rate of closures and hit it well. I've never subscribed to that thinking when talking about rate of closure. I've always thought of it in a release pattern. Either you have a higher rate of closure release pattern or a lower rate of closure release pattern. And so, what do you need?
Right.
The older club generation that's not in great shape and they can't turn, your upper core guys,
Right.
they probably need a high rate of closure release so they can get those clubs square and back online. And
Right.
then you have a very rotary player that's turning a lot. They're obviously going to need to slow it down. And so I think rate of closure has a really good place, but it's more in just understanding that you need to raise it or lower it. The actual number doesn't really matter. I mean, it depends on your rhythm and timing. But if you see somebody that comes into your bay and they're hitting it all over the place, right? They might leave the face open, they might leave the face closed. Now, these are all going to be mental errors for the most part, but it's huge. So you could take that player and probably slow them down in their rate of closure and get that ball to tighten up a little bit. And that would be one of my key, signs if somebody's really all over the place with their face. And then first we're going to talk about mental and like getting your thoughts more consistent. And then we're going to see, so when your thoughts are not consistent, because nobody can be perfect, right?
Right.
So when they're not, let's at least get some of the misses a little bit tighter where they can, not be in so much trouble. We're not hitting foul balls
Right.
with regularity. And so I would say most of the time you would use a lower rate of closure there. And the other one would be in pitching and chipping. I would definitely see probably there's some really good data there for suggesting a lower rate of closure would be better when you're pitching and chipping.
But also it's related to the club head speed too, as well, right?
Well, all that's when I say the number, because
Right.
you could swing, 10 miles an hour faster than me and have a low rate of closure release for you. And I could have a high rate of closure release at 10 miles an hour slower, and yours would be faster than mine. So if you're looking at the number, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Right.
Because there's so many other factors contributing to that closure rate.
Right. So you can't just look at a number.
No, and that's what, Dr. Phil Cheatham did, in his dissertation. He used the club axial velocity on AMM to do the dissertation. And of course, he found that players were all over the map and they were very good and they were very consistent. So it just showed, and I think that was a great study, but at the same time, it misled some people that there's no value to it. And there is a value to it. I always have said, and I've talked to Dr. Phil about that too, and it's valuable to the individual. It's not so valuable on a grander scale that you could put out on something like this and say, everybody should do this.
I love your statement that you say it's not the motion.
No, it's not the position.
The motion, it's not the
Right.
position. So you say it's not the position, it's the motion. And that's one of the things I love about working with Right Balance, where we have the upper core, mid core, and low core players, is it's all about motion. Now, we do study certain positions. I think a lot of people like to see where the club face is at the top of the swing. I think we like to see where the club is coming into the delivery area when the shaft's parallel to the ground. Where's the face? Where's the club coming from? Under the plane, on plane, or over the top of the plane in 2D. But to me, it's motion. And so that person at the top of their swing, as you say, are they in a position with their hands and wrists and their body where they can shift and rotate and move into the ball and square the club face consistently? That's really what we're trying to get people to do, isn't it?
It is 100%. And that's teaching in a nutshell. How is it? If we can take away the conceptual ideas of a perfect golf swing, and we can apply what you just said, how to use square the club face better at impact, you're not going to see everybody come out with an Adam Scott looking swing, or whatever your favorite golfers swing, or whatever
Robert
that perfect
Brock.
swing. Yeah, just all the Knox is good, and Fleetwood swing is awesome, and you just look at that and go, oh, and Nelly Korda, I love watching her swing. That's
All
one of
the
the best
pretty
ones.
swings.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. But when you get down to it, a Jim Furyk to me has a beautiful swing, and Scotty Scheffler's swing is a beautiful swing, because when you look at it, it's functionally sound and doing all the things that you would think biomechanically a swing should do. It's not walking down the runway of some Peter Millar show. Say that because I'm wearing one of his shirts, but they're not. It's not the runway stylish thing, and everybody goes, oh my goodness, and you just look at it, and it's those. Jim Furyk's might have been the most functionally easy transfer of energy that there is, and people would never want to swing like that.
Right. But as you said, it's their swing. It's something they can repeat because they're not having to think a whole lot about what they're doing. I mean, there's very few people that can think of several things and square a club face consistently. I heard Jack Nicklaus could think of six
Yeah.
things. I think Nick Faldo was someone that could think of 4 or 5 things and still do it. But I tell you what, Larry Rinker had trouble with more than one backswing thought and one downswing thought. And when I played my best, it was really, what am I trying to do at impact to hit the shot I want to hit? Am I trying to draw it? Am I trying to cut it, hit it low, hit it high? And all that to me was that picture of seeing the ball fly to my target. But, so much is said where, analysis can lead to paralysis.
Yeah, and I would actually, if you dug down even to Nicholas, or I think you said Faldo, I would challenge them. No, they can't think of six things and hit a ball. It's the same in my teaching. I have this discussion with new people all the time. It's like, when you leave here, how many times have we heard students leave a lesson and saying, oh my gosh, he told me so many things. And what I try to get across to them is, look, I'm going to describe something, right? And I always use a tree because we got the trees out here. If I'm going to describe that tree, it's a paragraph. But I'm describing one tree. If I describe the tree next to it, it's a different paragraph, but it's still a paragraph. So if you come down, or you're over the top and you swing and then you fillet the ball and you're doing all these things, and then you come over the top and you shut the club, well, those are two different swings that have to be described. And us as teachers, we're not telepathic. So we have to say, and just because it's 2 or 3, 4 sentences, it's not anything but one. And it's the job of the client, the student sitting there, to take that information and translate it to a concept, an image, a feel of what they think that we're talking about. But, if you have to translate words in your mind while you're swinging, which is what you have to do to even send signals to your body to move, you're always behind. You're always behind. You need to, visuals, images, feels, you're reacting to the ball flight that you hit. Those are directions that a player can use. And then us coaching positions in that, we're having to speak words. 'Cause I promise you, if I was telepathic, nobody would hear a word coming in my bay. They would just see the visions that are in my head, and that's what I would want them to do. But that's just, and so that's what happens in teaching a lot, is we're teaching corrective things that are really not the cause of the problem. They're actually the result of the problem. Like, your mind got distracted is why you left the club face open,
Right.
not that you need to fix it.
Right.
Right.
No,
And
that's true.
so yes, I have fight that battle every day. I'm like, did you know the club face was open when you hit it? And they say, yes. I said, then why was it? I mean, you knew it at impact.
Right.
You didn't want it there. So why was it open? It can't be that your swing sucks all the time. It
Right.
has to be that something distracted you and you didn't fire the right pattern that closes the club face. That's all there is to it. And that's a hard one to get across to players because they've been taught how to physically change every time versus how to let's separate it out. For when you have a mental mistake and you poorly execute something you can, that has to be a mental error.
Right.
Versus, or you could have a neurological disease. That's a problem too, right? So, or if you think you execute something and the ball doesn't go where you want, that's when we need a physical change. If
Right.
you think that ball should draw and it fades, and every time you think that it fades, then that's, if you really want it to draw, we have to change that feel. We have to change those directions. And that's a mechanical thing.
Right.
So it has to be separated. And that's why I have a thing on my wall that shows them how to use their brain to think. As soon as you know it was not delivered the way you want to, we need to be asking what you were thinking.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I always like to circle back in my lessons to say, okay, we talked about a lot, but this is the one backswing thing we're trying to do. And that's one, that's your that. And then this is what we're trying to get you to do when you release the club, when you swing through the ball. That's your downswing thought or feel. And I do a lot of full day golf schools where we go play. So I challenge them when we go out on the golf course that we've got to simplify this and keep it to just one backswing thought or feel or one downswing thought or feel. Driver fittings.
Mm-hmm.
I got fit by the new Titleist GT drivers almost a year ago now. The driver's amazing, but so much is changing in the technology, and I got to believe so much is in the shafts. And as we get older, we're going to lighter shafts, and they have some pretty stable shafts now in the 50-gram weight now, don't they?
Certainly we do with the TPT, the most stable. The process that TPT uses surely will provide the most stability, the lowest torque in any weight range. Even if they say that torque is similar to ours, it's not. Just because ours, when you bend the shaft, it doesn't add any twist. So when you do a roll wrapping type manufacturing process, when you bend the shaft, it also twists. So it's a great thing for stability. Now, the slower you swing, the less need for this, that you have.
Right.
Just because if you can't swing it, it's hard to hit it offline if you can't swing it more than 70 miles an hour. So the lightness there really helps those players be able to get it super light. But I do a lot with the engine. All these heads are so good. They're all fast. They're all, forgiving. I've had a lot of success with that GT driver, and but I only do the TPT shaft just because it's outperformed everything that I've ever tried, and it's never in my bay. It's never lost. It's always performed better or equal, maybe 10% of the times, because somebody has a good shaft in there already. Then it's great, and hey, go use it. And then you'll have to spend any extra money. But I sell performance. I don't sell gadgets or clubs. It either performs better and you own it, or it doesn't perform better and I keep it. So that's the way we work it here. In the shaft industry, especially what I've been doing with TPT, and now it's working into the putter. You can see we talked about it earlier. I'm doing putter testing right now, shafts. And I never thought that would matter. I really didn't. But it turns out that the delivery of the putter with that shaft torque and twisting it matters a lot. And so you'll hear some pretty exciting news come out here pretty quick. I mean, I'm pretty jacked up about that. So everybody should be like on the lookout for TPT, and I'll even announce the name because I think it's pretty much set, but called the Pulse. So that'll be if it ends up being, not the name, I'll go oops, but I'm pretty sure that's what the name will be. And then it'll be some really cool stuff that finally we can be able to deliver a feel that a player wants and not have to sacrifice performance. So this has been kind of a dream of mine for the last couple of years, and now we've made it, and I think it's going to be great. And all the testing right now is over the moon.
Wow.
For delivery of the putter head, and it's just great. So the shaft matters is back to your original question on every club.
Right.
We've had great success with the irons and getting those, and I'm working on new ones for that and even make them better. And it's really getting an exciting time because we're doing even some different designs than what people know from TPT that'll be announced here soon. There's even a new advancement in the technology.
So when someone comes for a driver fitting, and as you said when we were talking about rate of closure, there's other factors and other numbers. So you can't just look at a number. And so if somebody's looking at spin rate, how much is the ball spinning, and they look at launch angle, what's the ball launching at? I mean, those are a couple things you look at. And I think there's algorithms out there that tell you if someone has this club head speed or ball speed, that they need this much spin and this launch. So I think that's a lot of, now you've got the engine, you've got the shaft, but now let's get the club head set up so that we get optimal launch and spin for you.
Right. That's the whole key, because that, obviously the head is a big component of being able to change, and then the shaft delivering the head is has to be a must too. So you have to be able to match those two things together to get the optimal for that player and what they want. I'm usually fitting towards more optimizing the carry and the roll, not just carry or not just roll. Those are pretty extreme environments that people may play in if they're in a really wet environment or if they're in a really dry environment. But other than that, I'd rather just do the carry and the roll. And then that's a little bit different depending on your speed of how much spin you would want. And then you get to the tour level, sometimes you don't want optimal, for, carry and roll, because maybe they hit it a little too far sometimes for what they need. And so you might want
Never heard that before.
Yeah, I know, but I actually do watch for that. And, what do you want? Are you wanting? And then anytime you go to a golf course, especially with the TPT shaft, when we do it, is they go to a golf course that they need to change to more roll and maybe optimum. It's just a simple club head adjustment a lot of times versus getting a whole different driver.
Right.
So it's like we know
guys
this
really
will
doing
go.
that. If they're playing a firm, fast course, they'll deal off the driver, and if they need more carry, it's soft, they're going to change it a little bit.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Wow.
I mean, I know one player I can think of right in my head that I was with. He won the tournament, and I was with him, and we saw that the fairways were a little bit wet, and they'd overwatered the course, and I just smiled, and he's like, "What?" And I went over there, and we raised his loft up a degree, and so he could carry it that way an extra 10, 12 yards, but then it would just stop. So he could then fly it all the way down there in the tightest part of the fairways, knowing that his dispersion is still going to land in there. It's not going to get away. And I mean, he dominated the field that week. And it was really due to him being able to hit it so much further down there, and people didn't realize. And then their balls are landing normal trajectory, and then they're not getting their normal roll. And a lot of guys didn't change. And it was just like, I was like smiling the whole time watching him hit that driver. knowing that we did it and that was correct. And it was awesome to watch. And then of course, if you got a firm, fast fairway that you want them to roll, you might want to flight it a little lower.
So iron length. It's always been something for me. I've had people show up, they're 6'4", playing with standard length clubs. You know, their shoulders are out over their toes in their posture. You could have a short guy with long arms or a tall guy with short arms. How do you determine the best length for irons for a player?
A couple of factors. Consistency would be one of them. And certainly a lot of the taller people have longer arms. You know, I actually had a guy in here just the other day that came in and he's in an inch, I think, because he's really tall. And he was they set him in 1.25 inches, I think, over. And then I stood up next to him and his arms hang down this far lower than mine. And
Wow.
he's 6 inches taller than me. And I'm like, this is messing up your swing. So he actually ended up at a 1/2 inch shorter iron than
Really?
standard, and gained speed and could hit the face in the middle, and it was just a better thing. So it's different for everybody, and sometimes for people that are shorter, you know, going shorter isn't always great because they can't really get the distance that they need. So having them a little longer, a little flatter, if they can handle it, and it comes out, there'll be a breaking point where it's too much. But you have to watch those factors too. You have to maybe give them a chance to swing it a little faster with a little more length.
Right.
Now, you know, 1/2 inch really isn't that much. You know, when you see, I mean, people don't realize, oh, it's 1/2 inch longer, I can swing faster. Well, go see the difference between your 7 iron and your 8 iron. It's, you know, 1/2 mile an hour at best. So, you know, that doesn't change that much. But, you know, you also have to look at the factor of length. If you're going to use a graphite shaft, that's one of the things I'm doing with the iron shaft now, is a lot of the graphite shafts, the balance point can't be heavy enough. So you end up with heavier heads on a graphite shaft than you do with a steel shaft. And so that mass down there, and I think I've pretty much discovered that that's been a detriment, to overload the head to make them short enough to perform better. I mean, yes, you get the mass down there and you get that, but you cause some other dynamic problems with the ball flight. So I'm actually working on changing the iron shafts, because we actually, with the technology, we can do that, is change the balance point. So the graphite, we can put the same weight as the steel shaft, the steel heads on there. And I think we're getting a little bit better performance that way. So you can look for that coming soon. I don't know that the other way of roll wrapping or the other ways can keep up with that. Possibly with a different mandrel, but I think that's going to be a real important change in the future, because number one, in the graphite, I think that's going to help players too, health wise, not having that vibration. I've already got a couple of tour people saying, holy cow, I can hit way more balls and not feel as fatigued as I was before. I think that's going to be very important. I think as we get more into the carbon fiber into the irons, and we get rid of the myth of they're inconsistent, because TPT can actually make a shaft exactly the same every time. So now your whole iron set is truly more consistent than steel. So if that's gone, and then now we're going to get the performance to where it's flighting the ball all the way across the line. You know, I like my fittings to come at the same height. So pitching wedge a little lower, but then 9 iron through 3 or 4 iron. You can't hit a 3 iron anymore, mostly. But with the new shaft, I can. Even at a slower swing speed that I am today, I can actually hit a 3 iron up in the air again. It's kind of cool. So I'm trying to get all those to flight the same height. And that's something that with the new ball, that's why the hybrids have come in. But a lot of these better players, and even some, you know, mid to high handicap, could benefit from hitting an iron versus a hybrid if they could just get it up in the air, because they could hit it straighter.
Right. But it's hard to get it up in the air.
Well, it's the ball, right? I mean, the ball is the problem. And so, you know, the old Bellata balls, you go pull those out, and man, you can hit those straight up. And you can't with the new balls. And so I'm trying to develop something that will allow that to happen so that you can use a longer iron if you want to in the future. And then the length, then we'll go into that length to make sure that length fits you and you can hit the center of the club face. You can get the speed and distance that you need. And, you know, some of these heads now are crazy on the distance that they hit those irons. And for the better players, they have to watch that too, because those irons that have the spring effect, that front to back number is pretty tough to deal with if you're trying to play competitively. If it gets too big, and so that you won't see them using those. But you know, a high handicap person that smashed 1 7-iron in the middle and you hit it 180 yards or something in the air, they smile so big and they don't notice that their normal shots are 160, you know, but they have a good time with those. And
meanwhile, it's sailed over the green.
Oh yeah, they just for the next 5 years they hit their 7-iron 180. So I think
Jon,
we're going to get that taken care of too.
How important is your personal playing experience when it comes to teaching and club fitting?
I think it's been huge to have a background of competitive golf. I mean, I've played many tours and some of the Nike stuff, and just having that experience of the feelings that you have on the first tee, or the feelings you have to make a cut, or the feelings you have to win a tournament. I think having experienced that in there's nowhere else you can get it.
Right.
I mean, you can't get those experiences unless you've been involved, and it could be similar in maybe some other sports, but where golf is different is you're standing there and you're not moving, the ball's not moving, and the destruction that your mind can cause, you know, in that moment. And you as a teacher understanding those destructions, because you know, I know I've failed. So I tell my students, I've failed so many different ways that I can understand when you do it, and this is how we correct it. And so I think it gives coaches and teachers a definite extra piece in their toolbox to use to help people get better, because it's more of it's understanding why, you know, Tommy Fleetwood's coming down the stretch. He's got this great swing. Everybody loves his swing. And there's 2 tournaments in a row he just basically let go. You know, his swing betrayed him. No, his thoughts betrayed him. And then to watch him overcome it, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Now, you know, and I think he mentioned he had talked to Bob Rotella for a couple of weeks. I think somebody told me that. Well, there you go. You know, he was able to talk to somebody, you know, that could help him control himself control his thoughts coming down the stretch. And we watched Rory at the Masters. That, to me, as a mental guy, I watched Rory lose that tournament in the last 18 holes 3 times, and then I watched him win it 3 times, and then win it in overtime. Right? So, you know, you're sitting there looking at it and go, how, you know, that guy on 13, he hits that shot in the water. I mean, how can you do that? You know, I mean, but you know, if you haven't experienced, you know, it's not his swing. I mean, if you've never experienced that as a player, that's hard to relate to.
Well, yeah,
you know, but you and I can understand it. I know how he hit it there. He was puking. He was not thinking correctly.
He had a gap wedge in regulation and blocked it way right in the bunker.
Right. I mean,
when's the last time you've seen Rory McIlroy hit a gap wedge that far offline?
But that's 2. That's 2 shots in 6 holes that were just horrendous.
That's why you say he lost it 3 times. Or he won
That's right.
3 times. You think he's winning it on 13, he puts it in Rays Creek. You think he's winning it on 18, he's going to knock it on the green 2-putt. No, he hits it right, and now he's in the playoff. And now, lucky for him, he had a 3rd chance, and he stuffed it. He hit it
close to the same shot. Yeah, it was close to the same shot he just dumped in the bunker.
And Justin Rose hit a longer iron, so his ball didn't stop on a dime like Rory's. So he had a longer putt, and then Rory made the putt, and you know the rest is history. But the mental side of this game is a big part, And I see a lot of times good players, they'll hit three really good shots in a row, and then they hit a poor shot. And then they go, "What did I do wrong?" I go, "You got bored. You just hit three great shots and you're like bored. You're thinking about your girlfriend or what you're going to do next week, or
Hmm.
you left. You didn't stay focused on that shot." And that's why it's so important for our students, especially the ones that want to play competitive, to have focused practice. It's really important. That's why Rotella is big on, he wants people running their routine 70% of the time they practice. You and I both know that doesn't really happen. And even you and I struggle to make that happen that often. But I tell you what, it's so important. And one of the
Hmm.
things I used to hear on my old Sirius XM radio show all the time was, how do I take it from the range to the first tee? Well, on the range, you might have thought of one or two things and you gave yourself the freedom to swing. Now you're on the first tee worried about hitting it here or there, and all of a sudden, what do I think? And you haven't prepared for the first tee. You haven't stood on the range and said, okay, I'm on the first tee. Okay, what's my one backswing thought or feel? What's my one downswing thought or feel? Okay, I'm going to walk up now and be committed to that. So, you out there, if you're getting ready to play the first three holes on the golf course before you get there. I think
Hmm.
it'll help you transition. Well, Jon, it's been great having you on the show. If anybody wants to go see him, Euless is just outside of Dallas, and it's a great spot. You can get fit. You can get this new hot tea, the TPT driver. I still need to get that shaft from you. I'm
Yeah, we'll
I'm
get
about
you one.
ready to get a new shaft in my driver. I'm going lighter. I'm getting older. I'm going lighter. But great having you on the show. Jon Sinclair, Sinclair. Jon, always great to be with you, my friend.
Yeah, it's nice having you, or you nice being on your show again. Thanks for having me.
Well, you've listened to the Larry Rinker Golf Podcast. Till next time, keep swinging.